Thank you and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 49th episode this week, where we'll be recapping the Patriots' latest win versus the Arizona Cardinals and previewing the upcoming game versus the Las Vegas Raiders. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 level pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at pats300levelpod.com. So, Kevin, Patriots got a much-needed win versus an opponent that they should have beaten. Ended up winning by double digits, winning 27-13. What was just your overall thoughts of the game?
I think a few things. One, I think they got lucky that Kyle Murray got hurt in this game because it ended up making the defensive approach a lot easier for them, where you don't have a mobile quarterback. And that's something that we were kind of concerned about going into this week, where even though the Cardinals only had, I think, 4 wins going into this week, the mobile quarterback is the biggest threat against the Patriots defense. So losing him in the game on the third play made it a lot easier for them to defend them. The other big thing too was just how do I say it? Just how their offense is not really up to like an NFL standard still.
Yeah.
Where I get a lot of the screens where, and even Mike Reese said this today, and Troy Aikman was saying it, a lot of the quick passes that they're trying to run is really because they're trying to bail out their offensive line that stinks right now. So if you can't protect long enough, you have to do these quick passes to give yourself a chance, because you can't stay back there and try and throw any of these deep balls because you're not going to have the protection. So it makes sense why they're doing it. It's so frustrating to watch just because they end up shooting themselves in the foot a whole bunch of times. And they did a lot more at the beginning of this game. They did look a lot better in the second half, but it's still, they're a ways off of trying to contend with like the Bills or the Chiefs or any of these high flying offenses, the Eagles. So it's still frustrating being in week 15 that we're still having these problems. We thought that the offensive line was going to get shored up by now because the talent's there. Maybe not at right tackle right now just because of the Wynn injury and the Kajus injury, but all the other bodies that you have the talent around, and usually this wouldn't stop the Patriots from scheming up and trying to figure something out, and they're just not doing it, and it doesn't help too that the tight ends can't block. So
yeah. No, I think that's fair. My overall just thoughts from the game was this was an opponent you should have beaten. But they did pose a potential threat based on they do have some weapons. But being without your top 2 running backs for almost the entirety of the game, being without your top 2 wide receivers for the entirety of the game, being with a 4th string right tackle, and being without 2 of your top 3 cornerbacks and winning by double digits, I still think that this was at least a step in the right direction. Was it perfect? No. Was there some positives? Yes, there was. Some of the play calling, yes, the screens, like if you're just watching it and it's screen after screen after screen, it's not the most exciting game, but there were some wrinkles that Patricia threw in, which I think we'll get into Matty P in a little bit, that there were some good plays. I think one thing that Mike Reese said that I'd agree with is a lot of the killers or things that set the offense back were just misassignments where it was schemed up right, but a guard or a tackle, mostly the tackles or a tight end, missed their assignment and that blew up the play. Mm-hmm. So everything's, at least scheme wise, this game, it looked better, but there are still those misassignments, which part of it is you're with a 4th string right tackle, which with Isaiah Wynn and Kajus getting healthier, if they step in and play up to their potential, along with Trent Brown just being healthy, where he really just suffered through the previous game where he was not even close to being 100%. Mm-hmm. And he admitted today over the last week and a half, he's lost 12 pounds just from the flu. He expects to be at 100%. And he was one of your worst offensive linemen this game, but again, he wasn't healthy. So you at least have to give him credit for battling through, where not all players would be doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, he wasn't the worst offensive lineman. There was what's his name? I can't even remember his name. The guy McDermott. Yeah, I was gonna say O'Shaughnessy, but I knew it was something Irish. but yeah. So,
but again with McDermott, he wasn't that good, but
He's not good. So yeah. So
he's not good, and he was on another team's practice squad less than 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, so that's why I don't have him in the skipping ahead. I don't have him in my bottom 3 just because he stinks. So there's no reason to put him there.
And at least one positive to look forward to is, granted, our eyes haven't shown us this, and nothing they've done this year has shown that this will happen. But if you think back to the 2018 Patriots team, granted Tom Brady was quarterback, but they didn't figure out their offense until the second to last game of the season versus the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what set them in the right direction going into the playoffs. So this might have started, hopefully, if the Patriots want to have success. There were some positives out of this. If you build upon it and get a win this week, you might be able to start building upon things and maybe get into the playoffs, and you never know.
Mm-hmm. That's really fair. Kind of moving on to Mac Jones. We usually break him down every week. I don't really think there's really much to really talk about him. He was fine. I don't think there was anything bad he did. I don't think there's anything off the top of my head, anything great or anything like that he did.
I thought he actually had a really good game. Stats might not show it, where he was 24-35 for 235 yards and interception, but interception wasn't his fault. It was missed block, and he got hit as he was throwing. And he made some really nice throws that last year I don't think he had the arm strength or the ability to make. Some really good zip on the ball, nice throws on the seams, but also when he was on the run, throwing it to the sidelines. He's been stepping up. Yes, he had an interception. Yes, he didn't have a touchdown, but considering the deficiencies of this offensive line and just the receiving corps in general, I think that he had a really good game, and it's shown ever since after the Bears game. He's just been getting better and better. His numbers might not look the same as last year, but this offense, even though the players are similar, this offense isn't what it was last year.
Yeah, that's fair to say. And then offensive line, we kind of really talked about it, so I don't know if there's really much you also want to add. But pretty much both the tackles stunk in this game.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then there was a couple of missed blocks or missed assignments here or there. There was a play on second down where it was a double screen where it was fake to the right and then throw to the left, which I tweeted out when it happened. But it was actually a really nice play design. But if you look at it, just David Andrews missed his guy. If he got his guy, then it would have been a first down and then some. But just because Andrews missed his guy, it was also a really nice read that it was just stopped for a 1 yard gain. And it might not look like anything, but it was actually a really good play design. And again, that's just showing the just one guy missing their assignments, and it can blow up a whole play.
Yep.
And that's from one of your leaders too.
Yep. And then even on the interception too, where I'm hoping that it was a miscommunication why they ended up leaving Hunter Henry on a outside linebacker that's bigger than him, faster than him, is a designed pass rusher, and you leave him one-on-one with him, and that's the cause of the interception, where they had 5 offensive linemen blocking 3 defensive pass rushers. So I'm not sure what
if I had to guess, it was a miscommunication where McDermott probably should have gotten him, but again, we don't really know what the design really is.
Yeah, so that's just another example where I'm assuming it's probably a miscommunication. I would hope it is, because that's just stupid. if they thought that, number one, Hunter Henry isn't a good blocker to begin with, and then number two, put him on a pass rusher is insane. I actually thought on that play, and there was a few other ones too. I was actually really surprised with Kevin Harris in the pass blocking, where he picked up the safety on that play and actually had a really good block. And if they actually had an offensive lineman block the other guy, that play actually might have gone for a decent chunk.
Yeah, it would have been a big gain. He was wide open. So.
Yeah. So I was actually impressed with Kevin Harris, not only in the running game, but also his actual blocking. And that's usually one of the reasons why the Patriots don't like to start rookies or play rookies at running back, is just because it takes them about a year or so to learn the pass blocking. And that's not something as big in college. And I'm not too sure of that, but that's usually what they say coming out, is that they need to refine their pass blocking before they can do everything else. So I was actually,
and also the players in the NFL are faster, bigger, and stronger too, which is just another aspect of pass blocking.
All right. Anything on Matty P you want to add, other than just the what we talked about, the screens, and this actually making a little bit more sense this week? But
I thought that the gameplay calling this week was actually pretty good. The only one that I didn't understand pre-snap, snap, and the media effects afterwards was the 10 seconds left in the second quarter where you call it draw, and then there was the fumble by Kevin Harris, which that play I didn't really understand. Where I understand if you think you're in field goal position, but it would have been, I think, a 45 yarder, and a draw realistically is only going to get you maybe a few more yards. So what's the difference between a 42 versus 44 yarder? I'd understand making it a bigger chunk play, passing it, unless you just don't trust your offensive line to do it. But if that's the case, why even risk running another play instead of just having the clock go down a little more before you call the timeout?
Yeah, I think that one I actually wasn't as upset with, just because if they ran a pass play, there's a big chance that either get sacked or he'd have to throw away anyway. And I kind of understood the run just to give him a few more yards upward, just because we have seen the last few weeks where, and granted, it's been outdoors and not indoors, but Folk has had some issues with some of his distance. So just making a little bit closer for him. I didn't have a problem with that, actually. When I saw that in real time, I actually assumed that's what was going to happen, where they would either run a draw or a dive, or even remember against the what team was
it?
The Browns with Stevenson.
But that was also with Stevenson versus Kevin Harris, which I know Kevin Harris had a couple big gains, but
but that was different. Also a big miscue by the Browns with the defensive call that they had with that. So then they had the same sort of situation with the Pierre Strong run that ended up going, what was that, 50 yards or whatever. It was the same play kind of draw up as that. So they may have been just hoping that maybe they hit something on there.
That's fair.
Not done that. So I wasn't too
upset. I think overall, yes, as a Patriot fan, seeing all those screens, it's like, what are you doing? But for an offense that can't block, mixed with how aggressive that defense is, it makes sense where you have to keep calling screens and just give what the defense gives, take what the defense gives you. And we might be seeing more of that, which we'll get into in a little bit, versus a team that has two elite pass rushers that we're going to be playing in the Raiders, but we'll have to see. We'll get into that in a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good job by Matty P.
Yep. And just the one other thing too is that we also have to remember too, he is also the offensive line coach. So all of his offensive line problems is also part of his fault. So all right, going on receivers. Anything you really wanted to talk about? I don't really have much to go over. Other than Kendrick Bourne, I think, had his best game of the year. I think he was actually real dialed in, had some really great run blocks involved. And then the other thing is Aguilar, where I think I've been saying this every single time he has a bad game, is I just don't understand why he's out there still, where any other year, like right now, they're really depleted. So that also kind of makes sense where they need to put him out there because they don't really have anyone else. But back in 10 years ago, if a player was doing this, his ass would be on the bench for weeks. If that would be happening. And I get Aguilar paying what, $15 million. So that's a lot of money to be paying him to be riding the bench. And number two, you don't really have much because everyone is hurt right now. But I after this week, I want to play him anymore. Just it was great that he ended up great personality award for the Parker situation, trying to alert everyone, even though he wasn't even able to. They got lucky they challenged it, but as a wide receiver, his hands stink. So,
but to be fair, he is the reason why they won versus the Steelers with that insane catch, which who would have thought. But I mean, you never know. Last year he's shown promise with. You thought having the offseason he'd be able to get on the same page with Mac, but it's just showing that his hands are once again becoming an issue where they're just made of stone. But I think, like you said, Kendrick Bourne had one of his best games, not only receiving, but also in the run game, which really surprised me. But Taekwon, he did okay. He did what was needed, 4 catches, 30 yards. But I think one of the positives was Hunter Henry with 2 big catches up in the seam, where maybe that was benefit of just all those screens where screen, and then Henry gets the defense gets caught off guard and isn't expecting someone up the seam. So that might just be an an intended benefit of all those screens too, is you might catch the defense off guard.
Yep. Very true. Running backs. Stevenson got hurt. Looked like a high ankle sprain. You can't tough to really tell without them really saying it, but he did come back for a play and then was out afterwards. I think the rookies did a pretty good job at holding the fort down. I wasn't expecting anything out of them, so by seeing anything and any sort of production was actually a lot higher than the expectations I had. Harris, I think, looks. I actually kind of like the two of them together. I think you can see the potential they're going to have next year, or the year afterwards, where Harris is really that bigger running back where he kind of looks like Corey Dillon a little bit. And then Strong is that really quick running back. And Matt Groh ended up saying this: you want fast guys, you draft fast guys. Pierce Strong's really fast, and you saw that on that breakaway run. So it should be interesting, I think, to really see what next year it's going to look like. And usually that's when the Patriots running backs kind of take off is year two. So it does look like they have something in these two, I think. It wasn't perfect, but
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it wasn't perfect, but you could see some things out of them.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that going into this over the past few weeks with Damien Harris being hurt, I was wondering maybe going into the year, I thought Harris would be gone at the end of the season, Damien Harris. But then because he was, I think he was second in the league in rushing touchdowns last year, ran for almost 1,000 yards. But after the emergence of Ramondre Stevenson, I thought he'd be gone. But after him being on the bench for a little bit, I thought maybe you might be able to get him back, where he is a nice hard runner, fast and big and strong. Not as big as Stevenson, but it's slightly different style runner. Thought maybe they'd be able to get him, since he has been hurt and has been able to show his best this year. But if Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris play like they did on Monday night, I think Damien Harris is going to be gone, because I pay Damien when you have two guys that you're expecting to hopefully take a next step next year and be as they were or better than they were on Monday.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think Damien Harris is back next year unless he takes a really, really good deal. He might, because he's hurt every single year. So
that's why I was saying I could see that possibly. But Pierre Strong, I was big on him during the draft and after the draft, where he looked like a faster, smaller Damien Harris. And I'm glad that once you saw that breakaway 44-yard run, you saw the speed, you saw why they drafted him and the potential he actually has. And I'm excited to see how this running back group goes the next few years, with Stevenson only in his second year and Harris and Strong in their first year.
All right, moving on to the Patriots D. Like I kind of mentioned, they did get kind of lucky with, and you hate to say it, with an injury, but they did get lucky with Murray getting hurt, tearing his ACL in the third play, just because it made it a lot easier to defend, where you're not having to mush rush and you can actually kind of rush up the field. And I think the defense looked really good, especially once they get the lead. And that's what we've really seen out of them. Once they kind of know what they have to defend, they don't have to worry about the run as much. They can kind of set their sights on the quarterback. And I think that's what's really helped Uche in some of his sacks and some of the pressure situations, because they don't have to worry about that containing the quarterback or setting the edge in those situations. They can really go after the quarterback. So it will be interesting to see over these next 4 weeks how they look, maybe without a lead, or when they're tied, or just against a good quarterback in general. So, but I think Uche continued his dominance he's had the last few weeks. And you had asked the question, I can't remember how many weeks ago, it was a few weeks ago, will they have two double-digit sack leaders? And none of us had even, well, not leaders, but two double-digit sack people on their roster. And neither of us had Uche in mind. We were thinking it was going to be Wise, probably.
No, we did, because I asked the question. The question I asked was, how many times have there been three players on the same team with double-digit sacks? Because Uche had 4 at the time.
Okay. So I don't think I was including Uche. I think I thought it was going to be Wise and Judon, but Wise is kind of trailed off a little bit, except there was on a sack. He got clearly held around his neck. And I remember there's is it a sack or an interception or something? I can't remember, but I meant to tweet it out, but it didn't matter for them anyway. Any other thoughts kind of on their defense, the pass rush?
No, I think the pass rush has been good. Judon, after a couple quiet weeks, had a nice week of 1.5 sacks. There was one play where he kind of broke containment and allowed a big run to his side for 20-something yards. But other than that, he had a pretty good game. And then he had a big stop on third down to force the fourth down, which Tavai ended up then getting getting pass deflection. But overall, Uche has looked great. And I wonder, considering how good he's been, 10 sacks in his last 6 games, he has one more year left on his contract after this year. I wonder if they're going to try and sign him to a contract extension this offseason. And I wonder if the past few weeks is going to hurt them in some aspects, because the last 4 weeks is probably him getting a lot more money than he otherwise would have. But it's good to know, even if you don't sign him, you have Uche and Judon and Wise next year. So that's a pretty good front four of rushing the quarterback. And then when Barmore comes back, that's another aspect. Aquale was really good. I thought Aquale actually had an excellent game rushing the passer, and even a couple plays on the run too. But they're looking good. And that's something that this defense needs, is to rush the quarterback. And then especially with having some cornerbacks out, with Mills being out the past few weeks, Jack Jones having a knee injury, not really sure what his playing availability is going to be looking like.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting too, like you said, about how his rise has been the last 4 weeks, potentially getting paid. It's actually funny where I feel like Jonathan Jones is actually kind of on the opposite spectrum, where he's really fallen off from how he was playing. He's really been, I think, exposed against these elite wide receivers, where I think it's kind of showing that he really isn't an elite cornerback. He's a very good cornerback, but he's not one of those top 5, top 10 cornerbacks, shutdown cornerbacks. He's an elite, probably slot cornerback, but not really one of those elite boundaries. So I don't think that I'd assume there's probably going to be someone that pays him, just because there's going to be someone desperate for a cornerback looking to pay for him. But I doubt the Patriots.
But I think he's turning 32, if I'm not mistaken.
He's not that old. I think he was 28, wasn't he?
I don't think so. Let me see.
While you look that up, the other kind of story of this game too is just
he's 29.
29. Okay.
Yeah, turning 30 in September.
So he can still get a big contract, probably 3-4 years. The other tale of this game.
One more thing on the defense, though, that I just wanted to touch on quick was we saw this especially in the first half. Second half, they got better. But once Kyler Murray went down and Colt McCoy came in, it was death by quick passes, slants, and they just kept executing, getting first downs on just those quick passes. And that's something that the defense wasn't able to stop at first. And when you play Miami in a couple of weeks, which is gonna as much of a must-win game as you can get, that's something that Tua excels at, is the quick passes, which they've killed you the last 3 times you played Tua. And so it wasn't encouraging seeing that. Granted, they were without Mills, they were without Jack Jones, but that's something that they're gonna have to shore up. They did better in the second half, but that's something you need to see better from this defense.
Yep. And one thing came to mind was we actually saw a little bit of Sean Wade in this game, and he got burnt on a crossing route. So it wasn't great for someone that I had high expectations going in for this season.
But part of it, though, at least with the quick slant or the slot receivers, though, is Marcus Jones who would normally be one of your slot corners, had to play outside corner because of the injuries of Mills and Jack Jones. And then if Jack Jones is healthy, maybe you have Jack Jones and Jalen Mills on the outside and Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones on the inside too, to help shore that up too. So that's just something to keep in mind. You were down some cornerbacks, but that's something that the defense does have to get better if they want to have a chance of making the playoffs and winning some games in the playoffs.
Yep. All right. So real quickly on this, one of the other tale of the story would just be the injuries that happened to the Patriots. Jack Jones ended up saying he said it was a bone bruise on his knee, so nothing structural or anything like that. He didn't practice today. Today's Wednesday, but hopefully he will be able to get out there. But we even saw with David Andrews, he ended up missing a week with a that thigh bruise. So hopefully it's not too bad. Ramondre had the ankle sprain. I don't think they've come out saying if it's high or low, but it kind of looked like a high one. But based on
But
him
he
going
did
out,
come back
he
in the
come
game.
back from
Granted,
one, so maybe it's a
that
lower one.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times you don't see that inflammation until that night or the next day. So
Yeah.
interesting to see. Hopefully he comes back soon. Parker concussion. I feel like all the players that they have had concussions are out forever. So hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. But I was even texting you today. Hoyer has been like MIA ever since he had his. Marcus Cannon's been another one.
Jacoby Myers was at practice today and did practice a little bit, so that's at least encouraging. He did have the concussion, but or head injury. I don't know if it was actually a concussion, but
and he's missed what 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
I think 2 weeks.
Yeah. But you feel they're going to definitely be taking these things a lot more serious just because of the whole Tua situation anyway. McCourty, I don't know what it was. They never really came out saying on the replay. When he was telling the doctor, he said it was his shoulder and not his head.
Yeah.
And he wasn't on the injury report today, so it must have been his shoulder. He just said he was old. And then Schooler was seen with a brace on, but he said he's fine. So, bunch of injuries that happened, but hopefully none of them too severe.
Yeah, and I feel like part of it with McCourty too being taken out of the game was after they clearly missed the Parker concussion. I feel like the doctors were just being extra safe where anything that was even close, they just wanted to cover their ass and just do it just to be safe.
Exactly. All right, 3 up, 3 down real quick, and then we'll get to 5 questions. Who are your 3 up?
My 3 up, which is kind of 4.5, is Josh Uche, number 1, Marcus Jones, number 2, Pierre Strong, number 3A, and then Aquali and Tavai, 3B. All
right. And then I had Uche, Marcus Jones, and then the combination of Strong and Harris. So Uche, I think we kind of really discussed a bunch. I don't think I'll have to add on that. Marcus Jones, really being a 3-way player, something that isn't really done that much. And I think he could be electric in the offensive scheme. He's just really fast, and he's kind of got Tyreek Hill speed. And I'm not saying he's going to be Tyreek Hill, but you get a fast player of the ball and he knows how to move, and you could see it in the punt returns and just even on offense, he could be have some bigger plays in there. And then Strong and Harris, I already mentioned, pretty good duo for them.
Yep.
Anything you like to add on those?
Yeah, just with Marcus Jones, I think one underrated aspect was how I think this was by far his best defensive game, where the first half of the season, he wasn't really seeing the field much on defense. Then as the season went on, he saw a little more and more reps, but having to play outside versus DeAndre Hopkins, who has 4 or 5 inches on him, and playing him well. Granted, it wasn't all on DeAndre Hopkins, but I thought this was, he was very good in defense, and you've seen the growth from him. Then on offense, like you said, he's just a special player with the ball in his hands, where you're not asking him to run some go routes, which maybe he will as the season goes on because of how fast he is, but just do a double screen and get the ball in his hands, and he has the ability to make people miss, as we've seen on kick returns and punt returns. Not do anything super special, but having him on the field for 10 reps with the expectation he gets maybe 2 catches and then maybe breaks something for a big first down or touchdown, like we've seen a couple times this year. And then I almost went with Strong and Harris, but the reason why I didn't include Kevin Harris was he fumbled. I believe he fumbled earlier in the season too, if I'm not mistaken, or in preseason, which was part of the reason why he didn't get some reps. I know Belichick said ball security was the biggest issue for him, and he fumbled again in a key situation where they get lucky, they recover the fumble. Otherwise, that's 3 points off the board going into halftime down 13-7 instead of 13-10. So that's the only reason why I didn't include Kevin Harris, but I wanted to include Danny Aquale and Tavai, because I thought both of them had their best games of the season. Aquale was a big presence, both pass rushing and a few times breaking up the run.
Mhm.
And the past couple of years, whenever he's on the field, it always seems like he's making a big play after big play.
Mhm.
He's not getting a ton of snaps and reps, but when he is there, he's making his presence known. And then Tavai has improved dramatically as the season has gone on and has become a pretty good, dependable linebacker. So not something I was expecting. I wasn't expecting him to. I was expecting him to make the team, even though I didn't want him to. But he's gotten better and better. So just wanted to include them.
All right. 3 down. Who are your 3 down?
Trent Brown, number 1, which partially isn't fair because he wasn't healthy, wasn't at full strength. But again, he's your left tackle, and the offensive line has been an issue. Aguilar, number 2, just because drops again, which one almost was a fumble return for a touchdown, or was close to being it.
Mhm.
And then number 3, Pilardi, your punter, where it's kind of sad that your punter is one of your weak spots every year, which it shouldn't be an issue that your punter is one of your weak spots. But with a team that isn't moving the ball on offense and has to punt from bad field position to begin with and giving the other team even better field position is just something you can't have.
Yep. I completely agree. And I didn't have him, but I could definitely see having him on there. Trent Brown, he looked like he was out to lunch in this game. Aguilar at the drops, and then Jonathan Jones, he was just kind of really exposed a little bit more. He had a few penalties as well in this. So he's had a decent amount of penalties the last few weeks too. So
I didn't think Jonathan Jones is awful in coverage. He wasn't as good as he was there a few weeks ago, but it's the penalties again that
And I wonder though too with him is that I even remember from preseason, even early in the game in the season, where he is a bit handsy, and I wonder if it's just something where opposing teams are kind of giving that a point of emphasis to the officials before the game or during the game, saying, "Watch him, keep an eye out for him because he's using his hands a lot." So that could be the other thing too, where they just weren't calling it before, and now he's getting called because he was always a little bit handsy. But maybe that's what's happening. All right, 6 questions around the league. First one. 49ers question. So if because we saw Purdy end up being the Buccaneers, this kind of brought that question to mind with me. If the Jimmy G's healthy enough to start the divisional game in the playoffs, would you start him or would you play Purdy? So this question I kind of also posed because that would mean that Purdy would likely have won you the wild card game, because I don't think they're getting in the wild card now just based on the records and what the Eagles have only one loss, I think. So likely that means that Purdy would have had to win you a wild card game. So if Jimmy G is healthy to start the divisional game, who is starting for you?
I think it's tough to say because if he wasn't healthy to play the wild card round, then he's gotten healthier, but still might not be at full strength for the divisional round. And I think it depends entirely on how Purdy plays. If he plays like he did this past week and just gets better or doesn't get any worse and you don't feel like he's going to make a big turnover, I think you have to go with Purdy because Jimmy G coming off that rust, you don't know what you're really expecting. And you at least know how Purdy's been playing. But if he's been playing bad and they're just winning because of how good their defense is and the surrounding cast, then I think you'd go with Jimmy. So it's tough to say. I think probably Purdy, because if Jimmy G isn't healthy enough to start the first playoff game, then he's going to be a little healthier, but is he still at that health? Is he going to be better than Purdy? So
I'm going Jimmy G unless Purdy lights the world on fire, because Jimmy G is a winner and we don't know what Purdy is. Likely knowing Jimmy G and knowing that he is a wimp, it could be likely too that if he's healthy enough to play the divisional game, that means he's probably likely 100%, because knowing him, he's going out for a new contract next year. He's not going to want to put anything on tape of him playing bad at the end. So it's likely that I would guess he's probably at 90 to 100% if he's playing then.
So the way I initially thought, no brainer, you go with Jimmy G. But if the question was the wild card round, if Jimmy G is healthy enough to play the wild card round, I think you go Jimmy G. But if he doesn't play the first game and then Purdy wins, unless it's a very sloppy game, defense just carries you. I think you go with who won you the previous game and who has gotten you to that point.
All right, that's fair. All right, so next question, because we're now over 75% of the complete with the season after this last week, and knowing the Jimmy G situation, who are going to be your two teams in the Super Bowl this year?
I am going with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
And the Buccaneers.
This is a tough one because I don't know, and I can't willingly say anyone from the NFC would actually make it, because I think the Eagles will make it next year, because usually you'll see this out of a team where they get really hot and eventually they'll just crumble, and maybe they might lose the divisional game, where they're probably a year too early about peaking right now.
They remind me a lot of the Ravens from 2019, with the exception that part of the reason for the Ravens' success was teams didn't figure out how to stop Lamar. And then the next year, the Ravens didn't go as far because teams started to figure out Lamar, but you could see the Ravens were getting better. The Eagles, I think Jalen Hurts is in a different category because he's also a good passer. He's not just focused on the run, but I think that they're playing really well now, but they're just not going to live up to expectations once they come to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't have the Eagles in either.
Yeah. So I don't have them in. The Cowboys aren't going to make it because they never make it.
McCarthy's
so then what do you say? Yeah. I'm going to hinge my bets on Jimmy G still. I think that he's somehow going to come out of it. and
I think the 49ers have one of the most talented most talented roster in the NFC, but
their defense is really good. And you even saw with the Patriots in 2018, where basically 2 of the 3 games that they had played was basically a defensive kind of game, and the running game, where the only game that they really needed to kind of score and do well was the Chiefs. So they could probably get away with 2 of these 3 games. And we even saw it, remember when the year they made the Super Bowl, I think Jimmy passed
8 times.
I was going to say less than 10 times in one of the wins. So part
of that though was they were the 2 seed, I believe, and they only had to play 2 games before the Super Bowl, whereas now they're not going to be the 1 seed, so they're going to have to win 3 games before the Super Bowl.
That's true, but I'm just saying it's happened. So I'm going to say the 49ers and the Chiefs. I don't think the Bills are making it. They're going to somehow self-destruct, and then the Chiefs will get in once again and lose to Jimmy Garoppolo. Or actually, no, it's not going to happen because
Shanahan's an idiot.
Shanahan's going to somehow self-destruct with 5 minutes left.
Yeah. All right, which is why I'm going with the Bucs, even though they suck this year. You can never count out Tom Brady, and him being on the field, he'll find. Eagles I don't think are going to make it, just even though they're as good as they are. I think they're still a year away. Vikings are extremely flawed. They have a negative point differential this year, even though they're 10-3 or 11-2, whatever it is. Cowboys have Mike McCarthy, so they're out. Packers aren't there right now, so Bucs and Brady will find a way.
All right. Next question. With the Dolphins losing their last 2 games, and I think they're 8-4 right now, how many of their next 4 games will they win? And will they actually even make the playoffs? So basically, they probably have to win 2 games to be considered. So we got they're at the Bills, they're versus the Packers, at the Patriots, and then versus the Jets.
I say they go 1-3 with their only win last week of the season versus the Jets. I think they're going to lose to the Bills. I think Packers are going to Rodgers is going to have some Rodgers magic, and my answer might change over the next 2 weeks, seeing how the Patriots play. But I think the Patriots will. I think McDaniels, the last couple of weeks you've seen his magic start to slide, and I think that he's not as good of a coach as people are making him out to be this year. And I also think the Dolphins do have some holes, and I still don't buy to it yet. So.
I say that they're going to go 2 of 2 and kind of split the next 4 games. I could definitely see 1-3. So that's why I actually posed this question, because I can kind of see it going either way. I do think the Patriots will beat them. Number one, they're going to be it'll be up here versus down there. They were freezing when it was 55 Miami on heaters on their sideline. So what's going to happen when they're up here
in Los Angeles?
Oh yeah,
the game is in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So what are they going to do when it's 20 degrees or 10 degrees up here. And then they've always slowed down the Dolphins. It's just that they've never played a complete game against them. So eventually it's going to happen. It's not like the Dolphins ever blown them out. So,
and part of it the last couple of years was Flores, I still think is one of the top 3 coaches in the NFL, which I know the Dolphins beat the shit out of you week 1, but it's also in Miami in that weather, and it's also week 1.
Yep. So I say 2-2 to make the playoffs, but I could definitely see them doing your route. Next one. Skip the question. If you're running an NFL team, who would you rather have as your quarterback going forward, Tua or Lamar Jackson?
I pose this question because neither of us are big on either Tua or Lamar. I'd go with Lamar just because his speed is such a difference maker in this game, where if you add some pieces around him mixed with that speed, I think that you go with that and take your chances. The issue is, since he is he runs a lot of the time, there's risk of injury, where you saw what happened to Cam Newton. But I still just don't believe in Tua. I know he's having a good year, but that's almost entirely due to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
This is a really good question. And you even see it now, like you mentioned, with the injuries. Lamar's hurt again. And of course, it's the worst possible timing because I have him in my fantasy team. But he's kind of really stunk the last 5 weeks or so anyway in fantasy. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with Tua because at least he's accurate within the first.
That's fair.
10, 15, 20, maybe 20 yards.
Maybe.
So you can at least get some passing out of him. Whereas Lamar, you have no idea where that ball is going with him. And he's very inaccurate with his throws. So I would rather at least take my chances having a short passing attack and knowing that he's not going to have any of these running quarterbacks. If you can't throw, he's going to be out of the league by 30, 32. So, I'd at least have the ability to stay with him. The one thing with Tua, I'd be a little bit concerned was just the concussion history. And you saw it with Steve Young ending his career early, but that's I'm not going to factor that in because both of them get hurt all the time. Next question. What position are you drafting in the first round next year as the Patriots?
It's a tough question. I think initial thought is offensive tackle because we've seen this year offensive line is such a big issue. But Bill has had a lot of success drafting offensive linemen later in the draft. And if there's a wide receiver available, like a Justin Jefferson, or we've even seen the wide receivers going this year of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Granted, they're not having as good of a years as Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase did as rookies, but still putting up over 1,000 yards and more than half a dozen touchdowns. I think this offense is missing having any playmakers at wide receiver. So if you have a guy that you believe in at that position available, you take him. But if you're not sure, go with offensive line. But
yep, I agree completely. I was going to say offensive tackle, unless there is a elite wide receiver that's going to be a complete difference maker, where I've completely jumped ship on my previous thought of what you need with wide receivers. So
the one thing you need to, though, is they have to make sure that they're getting separation at the college level. If they're not getting separation, aka N'Keal Harry, you can't risk it.
Yep. And then last kind of fun question. With the news of the shakeup at WEI, and Maloney are both going to be canned. They're not renewing their contracts for this year. Rich Keefe is going to nights. Foray is going to midday. Supposedly his contract's getting slashed in half. And he's going to be with Gresh. What should WEI do to try and compete against the Sports Hub to try and fill the holes that they're going to have now? And I'll add a little note here. I despise WEI. And Kari, I'm really sorry if you actually listen to us. I do like you, but the station itself and the Red Sox, I am done with. So it makes me have a little bit of joy, even though I don't like people saying lose their jobs. I wish Martin Maloney kept their jobs because I actually really like them. They're one of the few people I actually like there still. But seeing EI crumbles always makes me happy.
It's a tough question to answer because for me, I'm glad I live out on the West Coast in San Diego and I actually have very good sports talk radio out here with really good morning show with Ben and Woods, and really good afternoon show with Tony Gwynn Jr. and Chris Aiello. So I'm glad where I turn on the radio when I'm driving and I hear good sports talk radio. Whereas in Boston, the only sports talk radio I listened to was Bertrand and Zolak, which I didn't mind, and then Merloni and Fourier. But I'm sad to see Mutt and Merloni go, because they're actually Fourier were the only people I really liked at WEI. I do like Kari now, which he wasn't there back when I lived in New England. So I can't stand Felger and Maz, and you're competing with them who are getting really good ratings. So I don't know what you'd have to do to get that. Maybe put Dan Shaughnessy and someone else, someone that puts crap takes, because that's what Felger and Maz are doing. And, people will listen just because that's what it is. But I don't really have an answer. Ideally, I'd say Kari and someone else, because they have really good takes. But we've seen, I think Merloni and Fourier had much better takes than Felger and Maz, and their ratings were just fourth of theirs. So I don't really have an answer.
Yeah, the thing that really kind of hurt Merloni, and not to get too in the weeds with radio, but the thing that really hurt but Merloni and Fourier was just they were doing tremendous in the ratings in the middays, but that was piggybacking off of the Kirk and Callahan show, and a lot of both Kirk and Jerry leaving, all of their fan base basically left the station, and that's what ended up leaving Merloni and Fourier. And I think they had a great show that's is very similar to the Zoe and Beatles show, where they both talk sports and also like real stuff and kind of shoot the shit. And they should actually do much better than they are, but I think part of the reason is they're just getting killed because of the audience that have just left WEI. So I think the only thing they could do really to compete would be they would have to go in, and they're not going to do it because radio's bleeding money right now, but they would have to get someone from either like Barstool or someone well known that can actually bring the audience with them, because they don't have they're not going to do anything from the ground up, because you need to. No one's going to be switching and saying, "Oh, maybe this is good." So you need to have someone that has an audience already, and I don't really know if there's anything to do that, but I would try and get someone either from like Barstool or any of the other kind of new things, or maybe someone from Pat McAfee's network. But again, they're not going to be spending the money on it. So EI is going to die. They're probably going to get bought out. They're already at 26 cents a share, probably less than that right now. So,
but that's all of Odyssey, and I hope Odyssey doesn't get bought out, because my sports talk radio 97.3 The Fan out in San Diego is an Odyssey station. So I don't want that. But
all right, moving on. Raiders preview. Let's see if we can get this done in the next 14 minutes. Raiders coming in 5-8. Josh has made the team look a little bit better than they were kind of doing before. They actually had really close games for pretty much all of their losses. Not all of them, but most of them. And it's actually very similar to how they were last year, where they actually won the close games rather than losing them. So going into the season, actually, the odds makers actually did see them actually having a little bit more of a downward year, just because the odds of you winning close games back-to-back years is actually very unlikely. So this actually shouldn't be as surprising as we thought, but based on the Adams and the people coming in, you would think they were going to do better. But realistically, Derek Carr's been awful, and they need a better quarterback, and that's going to Tom Brady. If I had to bet any money, I would say he's going there next year. It's either him or Jimmy G. So they need to get rid of Carr. They have a whole bunch of talent on this team, and they just don't have the quarterback.
The thing with Jimmy G, I don't think Jimmy G is the answer. I think Jimmy G is similar to Carr. Yes, he's slightly better, but he also gets hurt more.
He's a better Carr though. So you need to step in the right direction.
He's a better Carr, but you don't know if he's going to be on the field. So if that's the case, is he really a better Carr?
Maybe they get Jimmy, and maybe he believes in Jarrett Stidham as a backup.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good question and a good point to bring up, because people might not realize it. But yes, they're 5-8, but they're only one of their losses by more than one score when they got blown out by the Saints, which was 24-0. But if you look at Week 1, they lost to the Chargers by 5, 24-19. Week 2, they lost to the Cardinals in overtime. Week 3, they lost to the Titans by 2. Week 5, they lost to the Chiefs by 1. Week 8, they got blown out by the Saints. Week 9, they lost to the Jaguars by 7. Week 10, they lost to the Colts by 5. And then last week, they lost to the Rams by 1. They lost 4 games where they blew a double-digit lead, all in the second half. And that's one thing is they've gotten out to big leads actually a lot this year. But it's the second half, they haven't been able to make adjustments, whereas other teams have. And that's one thing to keep an eye on. Another thing, though, is the Patriots are going to be playing Belichick assistant, or either former assistant or player, which he's only around 500 at. I believe it's right around 17-17, give or take a game. Whereas he has, I think, a 70% winning percentage versus non-Belichick proteges. So that is something to keep in mind. But they do have talent. We saw them, or the Patriots saw them in training camp. They had the practices together and then the preseason game where they get blown out. So they do have some familiarity, not with just the coaching staff, but having played them in practice against them earlier in the year.
Yep, that's really true. And that's one of the things we talked about before, is just that the thing that's going to make this game the most difficult is basically the Josh McDaniels factor. And what is he going to do to kind of break apart the Patriots, where he knows them probably better than anyone, just based on he's been with the team for 20 years, give or take. Well, what's that factor going to be? They've got some really good playmakers, both on offense and defense. Their defense isn't that great, and that's kind of why they've blown a lot of these leads. And they're going to need to make some changes next year. But on offense, they got Devontae. Well, the other problem with their offense coming into this week was that they were kind of depleted with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow being hurt. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Devontae Adams is having a great year this year. And it's not surprising. He's one of the top 5 receivers in the game right now. Really helping my fantasy team that I was able to trade for him. But he's been having a really big year. Huge numbers this year. So it's someone that they're going to have to key on. And then Josh Jacobs has been really good this year. He's leading the league in rushing yards. Has been really kind of what they've been leaning on the last few weeks because they haven't been able to have as many options in the passing game. So he's been a real good talent at the running game. They're probably, well, they're not the ones that had to do this, but they're probably upset that his 5th year option wasn't picked up.
I thought they were the ones that did it.
Were they? I thought
it was done in this past offseason, I believe.
I thought he's in his 4th year now.
Yeah, it's before your 4th year, I thought.
It's the beginning of your 3rd year.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because that's why Isaiah Wynn fucked them. Because he basically took off all of last year.
Last year was his 4th year. This is his 5th year.
Yeah, so it had to be
after your 3rd year, before your 4th year.
Yeah, when did they take over?
They took over this year. Josh Jacobs is going into his 4th year. So after his 3rd year, before his 4th year.
No, but when did Josh McDaniels take over?
This past year.
But was it before the deadline for it?
I believe so. He was hired at the end of the season.
Ooh. Did not pick up. All right, go on to the next
5th year option was declined on April 29th.
Oh, fuck.
This year.
Well, Josh is probably kicking himself there then.
Yes.
So I thought that was the other administration. So, but yeah. So with Josh Jacobs, they get Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. They're on IR, but they are designated to return, so they may play this week. May not. That doesn't always happen once they designate them, but we'll see how they look. Anything you like to add on their offense at all?
No, I think stopping Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs is going to be the overall key to the game because, like you said, Devontae Adams is just having another unbelievable season, even with Derek Carr as his quarterback, where 3rd in the league in yards with 1,250, tied for 1st in touchdowns with 12, 5th in catches with 82. He has 20 catches for 20 plus yards, which is 3rd in the league. He has 5 catches for 40 plus yards, which is also 3rd in the league. So the big key is limiting Devontae Adams and also making sure he doesn't get some big gains. So you can't allow him to have any 20 plus yard catches or things like that, or have him beat the secondary and go for a big score.
Mhm.
And then Josh Jacobs leading the league in rushing yards with 1,400. He has more than 200 more yards than the guy who's in second. Third in the league with 11 rushing touchdowns, third with 5.1 yards per carry. And he's just been a bell cow, which part of the reason why he's leading the league in rushing is he has 270 carries. The next closest on the team outside of Derek Carr's scrambles is 15 by Zamir White and then Brandon Bolden with 8. So he's just getting the ball and then still getting yards every time he's getting the ball. So if you can stop this rushing attack and then limit Devontae Adams, you're going to have a very good shot. Because and that's one thing that we've seen inconsistency from this defense stopping runs. Usually they've limited running backs when they've been playing teams that don't have mobile quarterbacks, and Derek Carr is not a mobile quarterback. So that should point in their favor. But as we saw with James Conner ran for 85 yards and I think 5 yards per carry. So you can't allow that, especially with having a wide receiver as good as Devontae Adams on the outside, along with if Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow play. If they don't play, you can just focus on those two guys and try and take them out. If Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow come back and are close to their 100%, I know they've had down years this year, but Hunter Renfrow is one of the best slot corners in the NFL. Darren Waller is one of the best tight ends. Granted, he's getting up there in age, but those are two more playmakers that you have to try and limit. So that I think that's the wild card going into this game is the availability and the health and production that Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow give the Raiders offense.
Yep, very true. And then just the last thing about their offense before we move to defense is a little surprising based on everyone wanting Josh McDaniels back here. But they're also having struggles with their red zone offense. They're 29th in the red zone offense in the NFL, 17 touchdowns on 37 attempts. So that's just one thing to keep in mind too, how we can kind of defend them in the red zone. If we get them there, maybe they might not be able to score as many touchdowns if we can kind of do a bend don't break like they've had in the past with other teams. Going on to the defense, I'll let you kind of talk about them since you know them a little bit more than I do.
Yeah, so I think they're fourth worst in passing yards allowed per game with allowing about 255. Part of that is just the division they're in, where you're playing the Chargers, you're playing Justin Herbert, you're playing Patrick Mahomes, and then some of the other teams that they played. But also another thing that has contributed to that is they haven't had great pressure rates. They're 8th lowest in pressure rates per game at only just under 19%. And 8th lowest in sacks per game at just under 2 sacks per game, even though they have the 11th highest blitz rate of 27, almost 28%. Another thing is they don't get many takeaways. They're second to last in the league with 10 takeaways. They only have 4 interceptions. So they haven't been able to turn the ball over, which is part of the reason why they've probably struggled a little bit scoring points too. But on the edges, this is the thing that worries me is they have 2 of the best pass rushers in the league, Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. Max Crosby has 9.5 sacks on the season. Chandler Jones started off the year very slow. In the first 11 games, only had half a sack, but he's had 4 sacks in his last 2 games, including a 3-sack game 2 weeks ago. So considering the issues that the Patriots have had at tackle, this could be a big issue for the Patriots. If Chandler Jones plays like his production has been the past couple of weeks and Max Crosby as Max Crosby, they could be in for a long game, which this could force some turnovers. This could force 3rd and long situations or break up some plays. So that's one thing is for the Patriots offense is you have to protect Mac Jones and you can't allow the outside rushers to get to the quarterback. For the the Raiders rushing defense, they're top 10, 8th least rushing yards per game at only 110, 6th best in yards per carry at 4.2. So granted, they don't get run on a lot because they're playing a lot of passing offenses, but when they do face the run, they are pretty effective. So that might be a key with you have a banged up Damian Harris, you have a banged up Ramondre Stevenson. You're not sure if they're going to play, and even if they do play, they're probably not going to be at 100%. So are you going to be able to move the ball on offense with non-healthy Stevenson and Harris, and or relying on the rookies and Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong, which they both had really good games last week, but that that was also against a Cardinals defense. So that's just something to consider. And one last thing on their defense is not only are the Raiders bad in red zone offense, but they're also bad in red zone defense. They're 29th in both with red zone defense. They've allowed 26 touchdowns and 40 chances. So Patriots have had some luck the past few weeks playing defenses that aren't great in the red zone, but they have to execute since the Patriots offense isn't great in the red zone either. So this will be another week, just like the Cardinals last week, of yes, you might be able to move the ball upfield, but are you able to really score touchdowns when you need to? So that's just something to keep an eye on.
All right. Yeah, very true. It should be interesting to see how that defense does against the Patriots struggling offense. And one little other side note, special teams, one of the top punters in the league, one of the top kickers in the league. So we'll see how that gets handled with the Patriots, but not really too much to talk about there. So we already talked about keys of victory, limiting Adams, limiting Josh Jacobs. Hopefully the Renfro and Waller are not playing in this game. So it will make it a little bit easier for him. So predictions.
And protect Mac Jones too.
Yes, make sure he does not die in this game because Max Crosby is a very, very good edge rusher. Predictions: Patriots favored by 1 point going to this over-unders at 44.5. I'll go first. I get them winning 27-20, and the Patriots win with this one. It will be a close game, though.
I initially had it as being 27-23 Patriots. Even before the season, I thought this was going to be a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And as the season goes on, the Raiders, I know they're 5-8, but they've lost all close games. But something is telling me this is going to be the week where the offense kind of starts to hit their stride. I don't know why. Granted, my mind was completely wrong a couple weeks ago versus the Bills, but I was kind of right last week versus the Cardinals. But something's telling me it's going to start to click. And last week also, you kind of start to saw some promises too. So I have the Patriots winning 31-23, but again, with this team, especially against Josh McDaniels, I wouldn't be shocked if they lose either. But something tells me the offense is going to look better this week.
Right. So it should be interesting to see coming out on a short week because they had that Monday night game. Hopefully everyone will be fully rested and healthy, any of the injuries. And hopefully we'll be seeing another Patriots win after this. So look forward to talking to you guys next time. Make sure to subscribe, rate, review. See us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter at Pat's 300 Level Pod. On our website, Pat300levelpod.com. We'll get some blogs up on there, but you can always see the videos and the Spotify links for the podcast there too. So again, subscribe, review. Talk to you guys next time, and hopefully we'll have a victory against the Las Vegas Raiders.